Hey everyone, Renmar here, and welcome back to another analysis video as we look at Aurora's drafting pattern, priorities, and tendencies to get an idea as to why Aurora are so good in drafting the season and why they are so difficult to draft against for majority of MPL Philippines teams. Disclaimer before we begin, this stat sheet that you're going to see in the first half of the video is my personal stat sheet. And as much as I tried to make it as accurate and as clean as possible so that I am not providing false information, I may have gotten one or two things wrong here or there. So if you notice anything that doesn't really align with the stats provided by MPL Philippines, then do let me know. Secondly, imagine this video as a two-parter. The first half, as I mentioned, we'll be looking at the stat sheet. So feel free to put me in the background. Just listen to my voice. I will do my best to be as descriptive as possible so you can just listen and follow. While the second half of the video is going to be looking at screenshots from the drafts of Aurora from week 6 and week 7 so we can apply some of the theories and ideas posed in the first half of the video to get a better understanding and a visual representation of everything that we've learned so far. All right, let's just go straight into it and look at this interesting stat for Demon Kite. Did you know that Demon Kite has not been awarded any MVP honors this season? Crazy, right? But then, if you look back, Demon Kite has sort of slotted into this role for Aurora as like a Swiss Army jungler, wherein his performance may be flying under the radar, but his impact is massive. His impact in the game, his interplay with Light and Yue. Yes, the rest of Aurora are getting a lot of the highlights, but Demon Kite is such an important and integral part of the Aurora machine that I don't think a lot of junglers would fit into this system, and Demon Kite is the perfect fit for that. Just a quick little thing as we head into understanding the blue side tendencies of Aurora. So, when it comes to the very first pick on blue side, they get their quote-unquote chorus. The 15 games they've played on blue side, they have made sure that they rushed Demon Kite and Doming Kite's picks there. Think of Baksha, YSS, Lancelot, Harith from time to time. You could imagine it, right? If I told you Demon Kite and Doming Kite were the first picks always of Aurora, you can already pretty much have a personal checklist of the potential heroes that could have been picked in that scenario. Then, when you get to blue 2 and 3, they are flexible and there is no clear pattern for their picks in that slot. Whoever gets picked by the opponents in red 1-2 usually gets answered by Aurora in blue 2 or 3. If it doesn't answer it directly, they are already thinking ahead of what could be picked by the opponents in red 3 and trying to see if they can already pick up picks that counter that. All right, but those are only just a couple of ideas. They are very flexible in that regard, and we're gonna look at and see that once we bring up the screenshots of their drafts from week 6 and week 7. Interestingly enough, Aurora has never went into the second phase in the blue side without their pick for Demon Kite. They always have their jungler locked in already. And I think this applies to a lot of teams in MPL Philippines, especially in the blue side, because there's just so many strong junglers you can get right away. But it seems like Aurora have this system wherein in the first 3 picks, you already either have Lancelot, Baksha, YSS, Fredrin, any of those heroes already locked in. And not to say that they're going to be uncounterable. Of course, there's a very high chance that the team has already picked up heroes that can give those difficulty, but Aurora will build around what their pick is in the jungle, which is why that's another theory of mine as to why Demon Kite hasn't gotten any MVP honors just yet. Because whether it's a really strong pick that cannot be stopped, or it is a bad pick or a difficult pick to play that was just supported by 4 other very good picks, it goes to show the priorities of Aurora. Wherein whatever Demon Kite ends up with, they're going to be okay because they're going to be winning the matchup elsewhere. especially their priorities in the last two picks on the blue side, which usually goes for roam, mid, and EXP. These positions in this current metagame are the most demanding in getting right in the draft, especially with the Project Next update. Because gold lane mismatches can be recovered by good rotations or better team fighting through the objectives. Gold lane matches, usually if it is one-sided and the teams steamroll through that is an anomaly, because that means the team that lost the gold lane matchup also lost the rotations that could have helped the gold laner recover, also lost the objectives that could have helped the gold laner recover. This is what we say a lot in the drafts, wherein they were lacking a bridge for the gold laner power spike. So Aurora puts a lot of emphasis on the mid matchup priority, and not just mid lane, but I'm talking about mid as in the center of the map. How we've always discussed ever since season 14, it seems like that's one of the most important conditions for Filipino teams. And then once we go international, we see that as well. Your matchup in the roam and mid is so demanding to get right in the draft. One pick can mess up the matchup and can mess up the game for the entire team. No matter how good the team is, no matter how sharp their rotations are, it is just difficult to pull off if you are already losing just in the hero theoreticals alone in the roam and mid. And then if you look at the EXP lane priorities as well, for blue 4 and 5, making sure that they get the best possible matchup available for Edward. If they didn't get it in blue 2-3, the EXP lane has always been one of the keys as to why Filipino teams do well internationally. Because I believe out of all the regions, it was the Filipinos who decided to fully unlock the importance of getting an EXP lane matchup. Not just the individual laning phase and what it can do there, but how well an EXP lane pick does once it hits its power spike level 4, Turtle 1, Turtle 2, and what it can do for the team once we get to the latter portions of the game. Because we're seeing different schools of thought when it comes to the EXP lane, wherein there are some teams who would really like to prioritize winning the lane matchup. But then when they try to translate it into the team fights, into the turtle and lord dances, you see that their pick, which does well individually in lane, might not have the same effect or presence when it comes to the team fighting. This is something we usually feel a lot for EXP lane matchups that have glue. The glue can be losing lane or just be left to, okay, I guess I'm just gonna be clearing my lane while the opposing EXP laners rotate more. That sucks for my team. But hey, look, when it comes to the team fight, the opposing team can't do much to deal with me. I am living longer compared to the opposing EXP laner. The EXP laner on the other side has already dived the backline of my team and has died. But me, as the glue, I am still alive. And I'm already doing my job of displacement, bringing one person closer to the rest of my team, or pushing someone so far back that the opposing EXP laner doesn't have enough backup. And that's why in the long run, my team wins. That's just one of the scenarios that I'm thinking of. Again, to sum it up, blue side, Aurora, they get their core picks in the first pick. All picks for blue 1 went to either Kite Brothers. They are flexible and have no clear pattern for their blue 2 and 3 picks. They never end the draft with a Demon Kite pick on the blue side because they've already picked it up. The priorities are there in blue 1 to 3. Row mid EXP matchup priority is important for Aurora in the last two picks. Emphasis on the roam and mid duo for rotations and such. A lot of the things I'm saying, though, aren't exclusive to Aurora, okay? But I do believe that Aurora are the team that consistently do it the most and execute it to the best of its abilities the most. That's blue side. Let's go to the red side. So for the red side, here are their tendencies. They get the power picks for Doming and Demon Kite for red 1 and 2. As you can see, there are 11 apiece times wherein Demon Kite and Doming Kite's picks were rushed in red 1 and 2. The second most likely scenario is to pick Light's pick early in red 1 and 2. So they're not picking Doming Kite and Demon Kite, they're picking Light. One of the heroes that pop into my head for that are a surprise high loss rush, or usually Kalea steal if Kalea wasn't picked up by the blue side team and it's available for picking for Aurora. They are also very flexible in their drafting priority patterns from red 3 to 5. Usually, that's something that you really do see a lot for red teams. You have to be very flexible from red 3 to 5. But it's cool to see that for Aurora, their main philosophy is just get your cores. Because both the priority picks for blue 1 and red 1 and 2, they are very heavily leaning towards getting Demon Kite and Domin Kite, their best picks possible, or the strongest pick in the matchups as much as possible. This makes them very difficult to read when they're drafting a red side because of how flexible they are. Add to that, Aurora has a solid pool of 8 unique heroes on average in each position, adding to their unpredictability even more. And the challenge when drafting against them from the blue side. Just brush through red side quickly because I feel like I talked a little bit too much about the blue side. So let's look at the strongest heroes for Aurora. Again, if you see anything that doesn't completely align with the stats provided by MPL Philippines, please let me know so I can correct it. So, two of the most standouts here, or I would like to say 3, are the win rates of Aurora with Lapu-Lapu, Harith, and Kimmy. If you give me, or if you ask me the big 3 picks of Aurora that are definitively Aurora, that's it. You have Edward on arguably the strongest EXP laner in the metagame today, the very fast cooldowns, and how well Edward just plays that Lapu-Lapu. 80% plus win rate with over 10 games played. Dominkite is my personal favorite Harith this season 16. Too damn good, which is why it's a head scratcher for me. Why do teams keep giving the Harith? He's so good with it. If you look back, Dominkite rarely loses lane in Harith. Again, it's not perfect. He's not unbeatable. But I think teams really have to start respecting what Aurora can do with this Harith. If you look back at our Aurora video, how they rotate when they have this Harith on the board. They almost always give up one of the first 2 turtles just so that they can get a winning rotation onto the gold side because they can use that to get Dominkite out of lane early. That's just one of the tendencies of Aurora this season. And then you also have US Kimmy. Of course, the Kimmy of Yue matching the Savage that Sanji was able to get with the Juice in. So they're the 2 mid laners that got a Savage this season 16. 80% plus win rate with 10 games played. Now to add the kicker for Yue. He's also undefeated with even Sicilian with 3 games each this season. And I could be wrong, but I think Aurora are the only team this season that picked this Sicilian. They are not the only team that picked Sicilian. They are the most iconic. Because again, it's undefeated. And every time they play this Sicilian, it just goes to show why this was a comfort for Yue and like a signature pick for Aurora back in MPL Philippines Season 14. Revisit the Grand Finals if you haven't yet. That Game 6, that was the Yue game that forced Game 7 in the Grand Finals. His Farsa and Novaria are also undefeated with 2 games apiece, as Farsa has fallen under the radar. Novaria coming back up in potential pickups once you get into or after Project Next. So that's for Yue. For Demon Kite, his Yisun, Shin, and Lancelot both hold a 60% and 70% win rate respectively with 10 games played. But his Fredrin, Akai, and Baksha are all undefeated in 4 and 2 games respectively. So 4 games for the Fredrin, 2 games of the Akai and the Baksha. Again, Swiss Army jungler. Very dependable whether he ends up with the Assassins or the tanky fighter junglers. I'm thinking though if teams are going to be willing to still give like the Fanny for Demon Kite, as I feel like the Fanny is counterintuitive to how Aurora want to play. While if I look at the YSS, Lancelot, Joy, Baksha, Fredrin, Akai, that's like very Aurora to me. Not to say I'm undermining Demon Kite's ability as a Fanny, it's just that just really think about it. Even in the previous seasons, like when I think of Demon Kite, yeah, those other heroes just fit it. The Hayabusa, unluckily enough, Demon Kite has not had success with that, but that isn't like a slight towards Demon Kite's capability as Hayabusa. It's just that he didn't win on it this season. Unfortunate. Now, lastly, looking at Light, he has undefeated records with Franco, Chip, and Badang with 3 and 2 games respectively. And their most frequent pick, and if you ask me what the Aurora pick is in the roam, it's the high loss. Light started off the season with a not so great, downright bad high loss game, but now it's become like the pick of Aurora, similar to their previous seasons past. Very stable, they love playing with it. It interplays very well to if they end up with like a Sicilian or most likely the Harriet, the slow, the execution of the glorious pathway. It's very Aurora coded for team fights and for those sudden surprise pickoffs when you're going to use Glorious Pathway as an initiation. He holds a roughly 78% win rate with 10 plus games played with that hero. So those are the tendencies, patterns, and priorities of Aurora. And if you have been listening at this point, time to look at the screen because I'm going to be bringing up the screenshots of the drafts. Let's start off our draft study by looking at Aurora versus Onic from week number 6. Do note that the pattern here is all from left to right. So for the red side, where Onic is at in game number 1, the first 3 bans are Baksha, Chip, Angela, and the first 2 picks are Kalea, Lancelot. Just so that we can throw any confusion out in the air, because I know it's presented differently on broadcast in MPL Philippines. So from games 1 and 3, you can already see the pattern of Aurora that we discussed, getting the priority for 1-1 and Fredrin right away. With the Baksha, Chip, and Angela gone, and the 1-1 open, every team would pick 1-1 in that scenario. So what does Onic Philippines answer with? They get the Kalea. We use that as a means to take out the Kimi very quickly with the Tsunami Slam or anyone else with the Tsunami Slam, so that if you take down any of the frontliners of Aurora, it's a little bit more difficult to fight into it for them, though not impossible. Getting a pick-off hero would make sense. However, giving the 1-1 is something that I really don't like doing. For any team in MPL Philippines Season 16, no matter where you are in the standings, if there's a way for you to not give the 1-1, just don't give the 1-1. You know, just don't do it. So Aurora still prioritizing Domikite and Demon Kite in game number 1, and then they pick up the Lapu Lapu as their third pickup, which eventually gets answered back as the Phovius pick for Onic Philippines. So Aurora, they already know at this point just how good Edward is with this Lapu Lapu. He's been stellar with it all season long. He knows the beats of playing Lapu Lapu in lane. He loves that matchup no matter what he goes up against with, as long as he has that Lapu Lapu. And we know what he brings to the table. He can quickly get out of lane. He can manage that really well. If he's level 4 by Turtle 1, it can be very difficult for the opposing team to handle it, especially if he lands his Landshaker and he deals an absurd amount of damage for a fighter in the early game in that first turtle if he has his ultimate. So Aurora, going with the theory that we have that, you know what, no matter what Dominkite or especially Demon Kite ends up with, we'll just supplement it. The presence of the Lapu Lapu in the EXP lane can help Fredrin clearing and help control that side of the map wherever the Lapu Lapu is if Demon Kite is rotating that way. The High Loss and Kimi as the last picks round out the draft beautifully, because now all the pressure is gone from the 1-1. You have a secondary core in the center of the map through the Kimi, a secondary carry. What we talked about a lot this season with having a 2 carry setup. And then, of course, we know the High Loss dropping a Glorious Pathway, most likely having Revitalize as well, supplements the entry of the Fredrin and the Lapu Lapu with a little bit more extra heal. That extra bits of movement speed will also help out the 1-1, the Kimi in repositioning, the Fredrin and the Lapu Lapu, all of that. Plus, that means with all the members of Onic Philippines slowed, easier for Dominkite to most likely get those marks up, get a good crossbow of Tang off. It also interplays very well with the Kimi at the center of the map, as that is a very difficult duo to handle the center of the map against, because you have the Kimi constantly peppering you with the basic attacks, the High Loss just standing there with a Revitalize who doesn't care. If he dies, he dies. You know, he's doing his job for the Kimi. So you see all of the ideas that we presented in the first half of this video present with the High Loss and Kimi pick, with the priorities for Dominkite and Demon Kite, getting Lapu Lapu as the favorable lane matchup, also a very strong presence in the map. If you look at the bans, they also took out 2 of the best heroes Onic Philippines plays with if they really want to play for bully in the center of the map. Super Friends with the Juicin and Super Friends with the Farsa. Just to cover their bases, they also took out the Low Yi of Super Friends, because the Low Yi could have really messed up the team fighting of team that's centered around what we call the front to back style of team fight around the high loss, Lapu-Lapu, and Fredrin. So all bases greatly covered here by Aurora. Also taking out that Granger means that they really want to force Onic Philippines and picking up Hero that takes a lot of more time to really be effective. Something that can counter all of that dive that they have with Onic. They're rightfully and understandably so deciding to pick up the Claude instead, although that Claude did struggle in that game number 1 with Aurora just having a very strong game. They control the center of the map. They're playing around the 1-1. They take that. In game number 2, they decide to, of course, rush pick the Kalea, as this series ended up becoming a question of who gets the Kalea and who can better play against it. Having a pick off means that you'd likely to have burst. You are most likely to shine better with burst paired up with it, which is why they pick up the Harith and they pick up the Kagura as well. This was a very close game for both Onic Philippines and Aurora. Drafts equal, execution fantastic, one of the best games of the season. Check it out if you haven't yet. King Kong showing off why Onic Philippines got that Joy skin and why that is the iconic Onic Philippines hero. He got MVP in that one. Go back and rewatch it. It's a beautiful game. And then when you go into game number 3, again, you see the pattern, Dominkite and Demonkite. And then how do you supplement a Granger? Well, then why not we pick up a High Loss and Novaria alongside it? Again, slow front to back. With the Novaria bringing down the Astral Echo, getting a lot of information, that makes it difficult to fight for a lineup that doesn't have a lot of reach. The Selena wants to get up close, and Onic Philippines last picked that Selena, by the way, on the red side. And then you have the Phoveus in there as well to help supplement the front line. That Phoveus pick we discussed in game number 1 could not have a good time in lane against the Lapu-Lapu. But Aurora decided, okay, the other half of the coin, or the other side of the coin, is they pick up an EXP laner that does well in the overall big picture of lineup versus lineup. So there's a lot of dashes on the side of Onic Philippines that the Phoveus can really benefit from. I wouldn't be surprised if the Phoveus was picked up, because in Aurora's head, Onic Philippines are probably just going to pick up something like the, I don't know, Valentina or the, what's another one? Or the Selena. There you go. They were probably already thinking that's the best picks that Onic Philippines could go for. They're also looking at the Harith as, wait, we have a Phoveus available for us? And the Harith is on board? All right. Yi Sun-shin also has a dash. One dash that he wants to use very well. And that dash, once used, could potentially be a trigger for the Phoveus. So, softly countered, or one more thing for the Phoveus to benefit from. So in this series alone, you already see a lot of the visual evidence of everything that we discuss, and the numbers and the patterns and priorities. But let's look at more, and let's look at the other series to study. The Aurora versus Liquid Stomp series from week 6. Looking at the priorities of Aurora, they get the Harith as their rush to take it away from the hands of Oheb, leaving Oheb's pick and potential matchup for the very last as they picked up the Obsidia. Aurora, to supplement the idea of them going fast, pick up a strong side EXP laner. 2 of the best heroes in Aurora's arsenal already locked in by Aurora just in the first half. They get both the Harith and Lapu-Lapu. Yes, they're going to be going up against the CC in the EXP lane, but at this point, because of their track record and their rotations alongside a Harith paired up with a YSS, eventually that CC pick fell off and struggled against the last 2 picks in the Grok and the Sicilian. What a round out of the draft here by Aurora. As Team Liquid Philippines last picked the High Loss on the red side, this was a red 4 Obsidia pick by Oheb. At that point, that High Loss is just like gonna be a victim. A huge victim to the Grok and the Sicilian. All the range that they have. The Sicilian and Harith was a tried and tested combo by Aurora back in Season 14. And it was a beautiful pick, perfect pick for how Team Liquid wants to play this. This was an MVP performance by Light on this Grok, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in the season. He did not have a great game with it or struggled with it. But then in this game specifically, Light was on point with that Grok, showing as to just heading into this game already, you're already favoring Aurora's lineup compared to what Team Liquid brings to the table. Yes, there is that added potential factor of Hylos and Kimmy in the center of the map can be difficult to lane against, but then when it is outreached by the Sicilian, then it isn't so clear cut. As the game goes on, you'll start feeling the damage and all the crowd control brought out of the Sicilian, that eventually it was actually Carl TZ and JP who became like the biggest victims of the draft of Aurora. If you look at the bans, still the tendencies are there. Taking out the Juicin and Farsa, who, by the way, Juicin account for roughly 39% of Aurora's ban priorities. They take out the chip as a respect towards Daddy JP. And similar to why you take out the Farsa from Super Friends in the Aurora vs Onic matchup, you also don't want that ending up in the hands with Sanji. And of course, that Juicin being the pick of Sanji and Team Liquid in the grand finals of MSC against Selangor Red Giants. Second game, very unique decisions by Aurora. So they decide to pick up the Arlot. And then, at that point, you're thinking, okay, why the Arlot so early? Phoveus is still open, so usually you don't want seeing that, right? But then they brilliantly picked up Akai as the third pick. So the old relationship of Arlot and Phoveus. In Season 14, there was a point where 90% or 80% of the time Phoveus is going up against Arlot, Phoveus wins. Because of all the dashes that Arlot has, it triggers the passive of the Phoveus very quickly. So Phoveus is the old counter to the Arlot. But then that's looking at it from the lane perspective very closely. What about you look at it from the team fighting perspective? The Akai then is suddenly backed up by a Hylos and backed up by an Eve as well. If you look at the lineup of Aurora, you could see some potential problems though. Yes, the Eve could be a counter to the Fredrin, but then you also see the Juicin, who can use the maybe Crimson Beacon forward to get closer to the Eve, breaking the formation of Aurora, forcing the Starfield to go down quickly. Gatot Kacha up against a artillery mage. Alright, easy jump. We know that the Moskov could be an easy target for him when he's team fighting or when he's clearing lane. He'll enter SOD into the Eve and then find that. But then you're gonna second guess all of your movements now that you have a Lancelot there, and then an Arlot that's like, we call this Lancelot at home. Akai plus Arlot, more displacements that could potentially trigger the demonic eye, demon eye, the mark that the Arlot uses so that he can get vengeance, and when he vengeance into that marked target, it instantly resets the cooldown. So if you look at it individually, you could see some big problems for Aurora. But when you look at it as a whole draft, man, Team Liquid are countered here, and no surprise as to why Aurora eventually dominated not only in game number 2, but also, of course, this is coming from a dominating game number 1 win. Let's look at more drafts. Aurora versus Twisted Minds week 7. You see the return of the Arlot and Akai together. The Akai was the last pick on the red side of Aurora, along with a fourth pick, a Sicilian. The last pick of Twisted Minds on the blue side were the Guinevere and the Obsidia. Once again, you see the priorities of Aurora. They get the pick for Dominkite, but they save their Akai as the last pick, as one of the answers that you could bring up against the Guinevere, because if you get caught by the Guinevere, you can just pop the heavy spin and then suddenly you're out of it and then you're completely okay. You're covered by a Grok and a Sicilian as well. We already discussed how comfortable it is for Yue to play the Sicilian, and then when it's paired up with heroes that can just provide you so much space and peel for you with the Akai, Grok, and Arlot, no surprise here that eventually Aurora also just had a very good game against Twisted Minds and eventually just ran away with it. If you look at the bans, they understandably so take out 1-1. They take out the Kalea as a respect ban towards Kaloy. The control of the Juicin, they don't want to go up against. Again, one of the priority bans of Aurora. And then just to be safe, they ran it out. They didn't want to go up against the Matilda Baksha combo. They took out a very strong pickup with the suppress because, hell, you can't get out of suppress. Once you're suppressed, that's it. You could get popped, and that wouldn't be good for anyone on the side of Aurora. They still just decided to ban it out, even though theoretically a Franco would only be able to do so much against what Aurora brings to the table. There's a good chance that Twisted Minds won't even be able to burst down or delete whoever gets caught by the, again, hypothetical Franco if Kaloy ended up with it. Still, Aurora decided to be safe with it. They know how well a Franco can do if it's hitting its hooks because Light has done that already at this point in the season. Great just drafting and decisions again. The fact that they're willing to play a lot into the Arlot Akai combo, supplemented with the Sicilian, and then you can clearly see that for Aurora, they love the idea of the front to back. Because if they have a very solid and consistent EXP laner in Edward, Light can show up. That's a lot of space already for Yue and Yue and Dominicite. You could see that again in their blue side. As we see these drafts, again, it's just even more evidence to everything that we pointed out in the first half of this video. The Dominicite Demon Kite priority, the priority of the high loss, how well Glorious Pathway just interplays with the Granger and the Kimmy, how it's an answer to the Harith priority in Red 1 and 2. We see a lot of flexibility and juggling in terms of which heroes and which positions get picked based on what the opponent shows and how well that pick can supplement the rest of the Aurora draft in the big picture. Aurora are willing to get more difficult matchups, though. I mean, high loss Kimmy, tried and tested, very good at the center of the map. Twisted Minds, head scratcher. Okay, they picked up the Lunox. I wish they picked up more crowd control. Okay, they actually decided to pick up a Bane. I believe this Bane went into the jungle, but then this Bane was just gapped. Aurora ran away with this game. Twisted Minds weren't able to execute it. The Harith in lane struggled. The mid lane Lunox could only do so much. Again, it could get a kill, it could get a pop, but then they lose the overall trade because of the presence of the Phoveus with a lot of dashes. Yes, hypothetically, it could get countered by the Bane, but then overall, it just does well for the draft of Aurora. Yes, it could get knocked up by the Sharks and bursted, but then if it's free to just Demonic Force, jump on everyone's head, he will, Infernal Pursuit, the Infernal Pursuit, he will just jump on everyone's heads. Again, just more evidence to everything that we showed in the first half. Now let's look at Aurora versus TNC as the last sample draft. We're not going to look at the wins here because I think we've discussed a lot of the positives. Let's look at what happens when it goes wrong for Aurora in the draft. So TNC Pro Team really going to have to credit how they drafted here. They take out the Harith option right away. They take out the Baksha, as Team Liquid did describe it as when they went up against Aurora. Aurora ending up with a lineup that could steamroll, invade, and bully was just not good for them, which is why they lost, and they decided, let's just never give those kinds of picks to Aurora. They take out the Baksha, they take out the Granger. So they take out 2 Dominicite picks right away. They take out the Harith, they take out the Granger. The 2 best heroes of Dominicite this season. Great drafting choices by TNC Pro Team. And then, they first picked the Yi Sun-Shin as well. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the Yi Sun-Shin priority with Gatot Kacha and Uranus on the board. But then the decision later on of TNC Pro Team to pick up the Akai as a roam, Church of Akai, where you at? And then pair it up with an Arlot EXP. Yes, TNC Pro Team are very ulti based. Something that the Uranus is very happy with. Because as you look, Uranus was picked 4th. They still picked up the Akai and the Arlot. Over there, they close it out with a carry with all the tanky presences. But the main pick is the pick of Farsa. The Lancy pick. And if I'm not mistaken, that was a Lancey MVP performance for game number two. If I got that wrong, please correct me. But we talked about how in the previous drafts, Aurora, as much as possible, do not want to go up against the mid and roam duo that can stop a lot of what Aurora wants to do. Farsa naturally does that with how well and how fast she can rotate and the damage she can dish out. Pair that up with an Akai. Classic combo. Akai and Farsa together. Pick off, burst, but then if you're Aurora, you're doubting every engagement you're doing because now you're up against an Akai in the roam and the CC in the gold lane. TNC Pro Team decided to draft a lineup here that plays around and for the jungler, similar to the thinking of how Aurora draft, wherein no matter what pick Demon Kite ends up with, Aurora want to supplement it and accessorize, is that the right word, or just empower the pick. TNC Pro Team adapted that idea with the YSS, with the Akai in the roam, the Farsa in the mid, the CC in the gold lane, the Arlot and the EXP. Yes, this lineup of TNC Pro Team is too Yi Sun Shin coded. But when you're up against a Kimmy and a carry and you have a Farsa on board, a Farsa who is provided so much space by the CC, Akai, and Arlot, no wonder TNC Pro Team was able to win this. And a lot of this comes from the fact that TNC Pro Team decided to pick up or to ban out the two best Dominkite heroes, to take out the jungler that has done so well for Aurora this season and that allows them to play their very aggressive high invade, punishing early game MLBB style. And to even add more to the idea of TNC wanting to counter that, they pick up an Akai in the roam and an Arlot in the EXP, a natural interplay between these two, the natural interplay between Farsa and Akai. Fantastic drafting by TNC, incredibly well tailored. And if you look at the lineup of Aurora, it's not a bad draft, but you could see just how pressured they were into that carry pick, how pressured they were into the Uranus pick, although I do like the Uranus in this scenario. They were just lacking a little bit more crowd control here. They do have a sponge, but TNC just have so much crowd control. One of the times Aurora slipped up in the draft and were outdrafted by a team who were ready to bring up a lineup that is unique, that is new, rarely played, and that does so well against a team like Aurora. That's it for this video. Hopefully you picked up something. I know a lot of things were said, and hopefully you were still able to learn. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.